Notre Dame dealt with a ton of adversity in their win against NC State, and somehow the young, inexperienced coaching staff led by Marcus Freeman outcoached Dave Doran and the NC State assistants on Saturday in a very impressive win by the Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Irish. Today is Tuesday, September 12th, and thanks as always for making this your first listen of the day. You can find this show on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, and I'm the host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer covering college football for Fox Sports. And today's episode of Locked On Irish is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We got Luke Smith back on the show today to put the finishing touches on Notre Dame's win over NC State by going over the three things we liked and didn't like from the game. The everyday listeners already know, but if you're new to the program, Luke was my old co-host on a different podcast, and we've been doing this segment for a long time, and we'll continue to do it every Tuesday throughout the season. Let's bring him in. Okay, Luke Smith is back with me here, and before we get to our three things that we liked and didn't like from Notre Dame's win on Saturday, I am dying to hear the boots on the ground report from the weekend in Raleigh, because at 1:40 p.m. local time, you tweeted, quote, "I am having a remarkably awful time in Raleigh, North Carolina," end quote. Did your day turn around at all after that tweet?
It did, but wow, that was a nightmare of a day, if we're being totally honest. It was one of those days where as soon as I was just kind of approaching tailgate scenes / the campus, and I just see these dark clouds and it's pouring, I just had this sickening feeling in my stomach. Like, this is going to be a very long day. And the fact that people had mentioned the possibility of the game being delayed was alarming, just because, like, that's not something that you hear happen very often, although it did happen kind of all across that region of the country this past Saturday. But I digress. Yeah, man. As soon as they delay the game when the second quarter is basically about to start, first of all, we're all on metal bleachers, and you just have this massive humanity trying to evacuate out of Carter Finley Stadium, and it takes forever to just get out. And I'm like, this is truly a nightmare. And as I'm starting to finally get out of the section, and we're going towards actually, at that point, I don't even know if I knew where I was going. I think one of my friends called me and was like, "I'm going to go to the basketball arena." It's like, okay. And that was next door. But as I walk out of the stadium, it just gets like pitch black, basically. And it starts pouring. And the creepy thing was, they had this sound in the stadium of a wolf howling for the wolf pack. So they're playing that while, like, interspersed with that is, "Please evacuate the stadium at this time." And then you just hear a wolf howling. And
That's
like,
absurd.
This might be how it all ends. And then, yeah, I believe actually I was in the basketball arena as I tweeted that. I probably walked 500 feet and I was soaked. And my entertainment for an hour and 46 minutes was watching kids just run across the basketball floor at Carter Finley Stadium, like hitting the gritty, doing stupid impromptu dance shows. It was not fun. I had not eaten at that point. I really only had a couple drinks at that point. There was no water. So it was almost the game that broke me. I won't lie.
How bad was it before the game? Because I was waking up over here. It's probably like 7:45 Pacific time. So I saw some of the tweets showing how bad it was raining, and it was gushing. This is before the game. They were talking about how there was already pools of water on the field, in the stands, and things like that. So were you tailgating at all?
Yeah, that's what was honestly a really weird just thing in general about that whole day. I probably got out there about 8:30 in the morning for a noon kick, and it was like, as we were approaching, it just started downpouring. And we went into a bar that was right across the stadium. It's really kind of a weird layout they have there. The Carolina Hurricanes hockey stadium is right next door to Carter Finley Stadium, and then also there's a high school right there. So that's kind of where the tailgate lots are, but there's a bar right across the street. So we went in there, and it's just like hailing, it's downpouring. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of sketchy. But around like 10:30, it really cleared up, and I went to a tailgate in the high school parking lot by the field. And was actually a pretty nice day for like an hour and a half. And when the game started, it was hot. It was like 85 degrees. And I was like, this is really strange. And then, yeah, as it started to get darker, we all know what happened. And then it kind of, even when the game resumed, it was raining initially for a while, but then it again turned into kind of a nice day. So I guess that's just Carolina that time of year, but let's just try to, never play there again. I believe we play there in 2029 next, and I will not be returning.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of weird how nice it was at the end of the game, considering how bad it was, because when they were showing it on TV during the delay, it looked pitch black at one point, and you're like, this is 1:30 p.m. Eastern time, and it literally looks like nighttime. There was a point during that delay where I was just thinking to myself, like, okay, there's going to be zero fun had in this game. Just get out of it with a win. Seriously, it's not about survival. At one point, I was like, is there anything that we're going to be able to take away from this game? Because I was sort of under the assumption that maybe the storms would subside, but it was going to continue to downpour like it had been throughout that delay. And then it clears up. Notre Dame gets back out in the field. And I think now is a good time to actually start talking about the game, because the first thing that I liked in this one is how the Notre Dame coaching staff handled this entire game. And a big part of that was the delay, because right out of the delay, Notre Dame came out firing. They have the 80-yard touchdown run to estimate. But I think overall, if you look at the effort and the way that Notre Dame handled all the adversity that was thrown at them, it was really, really impressive. And a lot of that has to do with the head coach and his assistants and the entire Notre Dame support staff.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt about that. I know that there were some people on the message boards upset about the fact that maybe a player or two had a hot dog, and that's not anything that a well-conditioned athlete should be eating, and that it was poor planning for Notre Dame. But as it turned out, actually they did have food for the players as well. But I digress. You're right. The adjustments they made over that period were phenomenal. Really kind of having struggled on offense for the first 2.5 drives. That third drive, they started to kind of make some progress there. That ultimately culminated in that 54-yard field goal from Spencer Schrader, but you just hadn't seen anything. And then the way that they responded, I mean, they just come right out and that 80-yard touchdown run on the first play of the resumption of the game. That was, that's a play that I'm probably I'm going to remember that play for a really long time now. Having been there in that moment, it was like, I am kind of delirious. I don't know what's going on. Most of the people weren't even back in the stadium yet for that. The people I was sitting with weren't even back in the stadium yet. And so I'm just kind of sitting there with 2 drinks and a water bottle. I was just like, all right, let's just let this rip, I guess, as it's like pouring at that point. And for that to be the first play, that was pretty special.
It was. It honestly caught me off guard because they sort of like came out of that delay really quickly. They got right back on the field. The warm-up was not nearly as long as they had said during the delay. Initially, it was supposed to be like 20 minutes or something like that. I think it ended up being 10.
Yeah,
and then
10.
the broadcast was a little behind too. Like they go right to the play and then immediately estimates running away. I'm like, wait, I had to check myself for a second. Like, is this really happening? I was really confused there, but it was a really impressive play. And I can only imagine how you were feeling after being in that basketball arena for 2 hours coming out, and probably the weight that was lifted off your shoulders. Like, okay, maybe I'm allowed to have some fun in this game after all.
That's exactly kind of how it was. I was like, all right, whatever. This is just going to be a really weird day that hopefully never relives itself or recreates itself down the future. But as soon as that happened, I just got a breath of fresh air. I'm like, all right, here we go. This one could be fun. And yeah, that was a very special moment. And honestly, just talking about the play itself, I didn't realize he had breakaway speed like that. So that was also pretty cool in itself.
Yeah, he was moving, man, and he looks bigger and bigger every game. He has to be touching like 240 pounds. I know he's listed as 227. I think that's a lie, but that was really great. And going back to the coaching point, I know the point's been made by multiple people at this point, but it really is crazy how Marcus Freeman is the coach who's only in his second full year as a head coach, and Dave Doran, who's very well respected, he made some calls there. Like the one when he called the timeout before the punt, that was crazy. I couldn't even believe that they decided not to go for that to begin with. I was like, all right, you can be a little bit aggressive here. Then they choose not to, and then they burn the timeout. That was ridiculous. The way Marcus Freeman handled the clock going into the half was also great because it allowed Notre Dame to get the ball back with a chance to score, and they did. Al Golden, he's just been unbelievable so far this year. He outcoached Robert and I It wasn't even, frankly, close, honestly. He completely bottled up Brennan Armstrong and his scheme, the way that they utilize spies. So I thought that was really impressive. Tony Gibson and Jared Parker. Gibson did get the better of Parker at certain points. The flea flicker call, I absolutely hated. I'll get to that later. But overall, I thought at every single level, Notre Dame's coaching staff outcoached NC State's, and they're a far more veteran group than what Notre Dame has, minus Al Golden, obviously.
I mean, Gibson might have gotten the better of him a couple times, but the fact remains Notre Dame scored 45 points, and that was a team that hadn't allowed 30 points in, 30-plus games or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's pretty significant. And, yeah, you're right. It's funny. As we were sitting there at the end of the first half and NC State scores its first touchdown, which, by the way, should not have happened. There were like 3 holds on that play, and that was after 7 penalties that were all just absolute BS.
We'll get to that
later. I'm sitting there, and our buddy, Andrew Ingram, is like, what the hell is he doing calling timeout? I'm like, it's exactly what they did last week. Like, they're going to go down the field and score. They think that he can do that. And he was like, well, that was Tennessee State. I'm like, they have a lot of faith in Sam Hartman, and that showed itself, and it, was very rewarding for the Notre Dame offense and Notre Dame as a team, getting those timeouts in. So you're right. Those timeouts were critical, and I knew that's exactly what he was doing. There were people around me who did not pick up on that, but huge for Marcus Freeman.
I honestly don't blame them. They're just not used to seeing Notre Dame be that aggressive.
Right? No.
When in reality, that was the right move when you have a good enough quarterback, and Notre Dame does at this point in time. We'll be right back with Luke in a second, but I wanted to take this moment to tell you about Gametime. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you could stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun you'll have. If you're planning on going to the game against Central Michigan on Saturday but don't have tickets yet, Gametime can help you out. It's the fastest-growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect once you arrive to the game. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. And tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. What's the next thing you liked?
I'm going to go with the safeties. I was very impressed with the performance both from Xavier Watts and DJ Brown. And honestly, I could probably extend this to the entire secondary, but I want to call it the safeties in particular because I feel like going into this year, that was a real question mark. I think that maybe over the summer, there was some more confidence in that group after what the media had seen from some practices. But they both played really, really well. Obviously, both had interceptions. And what we saw at Xavier Watts on back-to-back plays with that ridiculous pass breakup where he didn't come close to committing pass interference, and I don't know how he didn't. And then the next play, getting a pick. That's what we've been looking for. We've been looking for him to break through at safety like that, and that's just great to see because he's a guy who's moved around positions for the better of the team, 5-6 times. And now that he's finally gotten some time to actually train full-time at safety, you're seeing how good of a player he can be.
Yeah, he's a great athlete, a great playmaker, and seeing DJ Brown make some plays is really exciting because he was always sort of categorized as this player who was always going to be in the right spot. Like, he knew the defense, he knew how to get guys aligned, but when it came time to make a play on the ball, he wasn't the first guy who you'd count on to make a play. He made a great read on that one where he jumped the route, got the pick. He almost dropped it, but he made a great interception. You're right, the secondary really shined in this one. Yes, the NC State wide receivers weren't that great, but still, a big reason why they struggled is because of how well the Notre Dame secondary was playing. And that one interception that I think it was Concepcion that hit him right in the chest and popped up in the air, I am certain that he was getting ready to get hit. And fortunately for Notre Dame, it just bounced right off his chest for an interception. So really great play. And you're right. Earlier this year, in the offseason, we were talking about safeties as like, are they going to be able to survive the season? They had to get a grad transfer from Rhode Island, and even though it's nice to have for depth purposes, we haven't even really seen Antonio Carter on the field that much because the guys in front of him have been playing that well.
Exactly. And I mean, honestly, the defense as a whole, it's funny you bring up those the Xavier Watts or Concepcion hearing footsteps point, because Brennan Armstrong, even though Notre Dame only had one sack, he took a beating in this game. I mean, he was just getting lit up all game. And I know he's a large guy, but he had to have a rough Sunday. And that really translated to all of NC State's offense. I think their success rate in this game was 19%. That's like laughably bad. And that just goes to show you how strong Notre Dame's defense was. And frankly, without the 8 penalties, they could not move the ball.
Yeah, and I want to stay on the defense because the next thing I liked, I'm kind of cheating here because I'm picking 2 players to spotlight here. Howard Cross and Maris Liufau. I'll start with Howard Cross. He was unblockable for most of the game. He was a force in the interior of the defensive line. And really, this has been something that's been going on all season long. This is just the first time it's been against really quality competition. Cross finished with 5 total tackles, a tackle for loss, 4 quarterback hurries, and 3 stuffs at or around the line of scrimmage. Again, Notre Dame didn't register more than a sack, but still, the defensive line, I thought, overall, played pretty well. Sure, it'd been nice to get Armstrong down, but it wasn't so much about sacking Armstrong as it was about limiting his scrambling ability. And because of the way that the defense pressured him, he never really had a chance to get out and run. And Howard Cross, when he's coming through the middle like that just creates problems for the quarterback because he's going to have to move out of the pocket, and Notre Dame might be ready for that. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Howard Cross because that was really, really impressive and something we've been seeing all season long.
I agree. The defensive line in general, I thought was very impressive, even though there was just the 1 sack, which, by the way, shout out Donovan Heinisch making the most of his time. Yeah. I know it was late in the game, but good sack by him, filling in for Gabe Rubio. I thought Javonte John Baptiste, I don't know if his stats will show this as much. He just seems like a wrecking ball out there, though. I mean, he is causing problems. Riley Mills, I think, had one of his better games in a while, too. He was getting tackled by 3 guys and wasn't drawing holding penalties for whatever reason. He did get some BS hands to the face after there were 3 holds on that play, but that's besides the point. I thought he played pretty well too, especially in the run game. So that was good to see. And that's a group that's going to need to continue to play like that as Notre Dame approaches the Ohio State game.
Yeah, I'm actually looking up the snap counts right now. Donovan Heinisch was out there a little bit more than I thought. He was out there for 21 plays, which again makes sense. He's filling in for Gabe Rubio. But when he was out, he made the most of his opportunities because even when he wasn't getting the sack, there was one play where he just straight up bull rushed the guard and drove him 4 yards into the backfield. He didn't make a sack or even a tackle or anything on the play, but he clearly was impacting the game. So that was really good. And another player I want to spotlight, and the second thing that I liked, is Maris Liufau. You and I were very hard on him last year, and I would say it was fair. But in the same sense, I think it's time to give him a ton of praise because we've been seeing it a little bit in the first 2 games, but really in this game, Liufau was just all over the field, and he's becoming one of my favorite players to watch on the entire defense. Al Golden lines him up anywhere. Like, he's smart enough to know where he needs to be no matter where he lines up, and he's athletic enough to get sideline to sideline. At times, he was spying on Brennan Armstrong. At times, he was in coverage. At times, he was just rushing the passer. But he's been really, really effective this year. He finished with 5 total tackles in this one tackle for loss, and a quarterback hurry. And it's pretty impressive what he's done, especially considering what happened last year. I think it's becoming more evident every single game that last year he was just not fully recovered from that injury. And now we're seeing the player that we had heard about in fall camp of 2021.
Well, yeah, you hit it right on the head there. I think it's very obvious now that he just simply was not healthy last year, or at least not 100%. Because you're right, he got a lot of criticism last season from us, in particular, from a former Notre Dame linebacker who I think thinks a little bit too highly of his own playing career sometimes. I'll let you all guess who that might be, but we'll see if he still thinks that way today. I haven't really been listening to his stuff lately. Anyways, he looks great out there. He's just flying around, wreaking havoc, just pissing the other team off too is kind of what it looks like.
He's such an asshole on the field, dude. He's so physical.
Yeah, I heard some guy by me call him like Troy Polamalu. I know Troy Polamalu is a safety, but they're saying he looks like them out there with the hair flying. And that's basically what Notre Dame fans have been wanting for 2 years since what we thought we were going to get in 2021 before he got hurt too. So good for him that he's really bounced back and is playing really, really strong football right now.
Yeah, if you're on the offense going up against Maris Liufau, he's just got to be so annoying because even if you're blocking him and it's not really in the play, like he's going to hit you and he's going to let you know about it every single play. Like that dude has a motor that few people have. So really love what I'm seeing from him and Howard Cross. What's next up on the things you liked?
Got to be Holden Stays here. I mean, his performance was just incredible on Saturday, and it was really, I guess I could extend this to just the use of play action that Notre Dame leveraged on Saturday, whether it was Davis Sherwood, Holden Stays, who should have had a third touchdown. He did have two. I think he had 4 catches for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he just looks very comfortable out there. He can fly. Not only does he actually kind of look a little bit like he could be Tommy Tremble's brother, he's starting to look like him out there on the field now too. And I know that nobody's ever going to block at the level Tommy Tremble did, but he's playing really strong, and that connection between him and Hartman is really something to behold. So, yeah, that's a serious weapon in the passing game.
Yeah, I like Mitchell Evans, but he didn't really have his best game against NC State, and he had that drop. He isn't targeted a lot, so his drops are a little bit louder. And then when you have Holden Stays coming on like he has been, I think we're nearing a point where Holden Stays is going to be getting the vast majority of the reps as tight end 1. And then who knows, once Eli Raridan comes back and he's fully healthy, it does seem like that's taking a little bit longer than normal, which is totally fine. This is his second torn ACL in as many years. So it's understandable that it's taking a little bit longer for him to get back on the field. But once he is, I don't really see Mitchell Evans being out there for any other reason than 12 personnel as a blocker because Holden Stays is solidifying himself as the clear pass catcher at the tight end position. And he had 2 catches going into this game, and he left Raleigh with 2 more touchdowns. So just a really impressive game by him.
Yeah, I mean, I do actually still think that we'll see Mitchell Evans quite a bit, even whenever Eli Raridan is back, just because I think they like him a lot. They trust him. I know he had a drop in that big game. He had a drop in the game the other day, but I do think we'll continue to see him. But as far as the passing game goes, I think it's becoming quite evident that Stays is going to be the number 1 option from the tight ends.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great problem to have this many quality tight ends, but it is tight end you, so it makes sense. All right, last thing I have on liked. I got to give a shout out to the special teams because last time we did this, I was pretty critical of them. I thought Bryce McPherson, I don't love him getting the amount of action that he got, but when he was out there, he was really effective, and considering the conditions, I thought it was really impressive performance by him. He helped Notre Dame win the field position battle when they weren't turning the ball over, so shout out him. And Spencer Schrader, man. Like, that dude's got a leg that we haven't seen in a long time at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, 54-yarder, which initially I was surprised that was the longest field goal in Notre Dame history, but then as I kind of thought, and then somebody said it, college kickers do suck, so maybe I shouldn't be that surprised. But shout out to him on having that record. And a record he almost one-upped himself later in the game, almost hitting a 56-yarder as well. It had the leg, just hit the upright. That's going to be a weapon if that can, connect consistently. That's something to really be happy to have.
Yeah, that's great to have. And the fact that Notre Dame has confidence with him going out there kicking from pretty much any distance, it helps the offense as well because you don't have to be as aggressive. Obviously, you want Notre Dame to be aggressive, but knowing that they have a guy who can kick it from anywhere in the field, it's like a nice consolation prize. And also the coverage units, strong game as well. No blowups there like they had against Tennessee State. So just wanted to give a shout out to special teams. College football season is here, and this season, the Locked On Podcast Network is kicking up our coverage with a new show called Locked On College Football Kickoff Live, which airs every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. College Football Kickoff Live will cover everything going on in the sport and go in-depth like only Locked On can, including insight and analysis from our stable of college hosts covering their team every day. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can be on everything from spreads to player props and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. All right, moving on to the things that we didn't like. I think we're on the same page on the first one.
It's got to be the offensive line, right? Not their best performance. Sam Hartman took 4 sacks, really got hit a lot in the game. And outside of Estime's 80-yard run and a couple nice runs from Jadarian Price, the offense just really kind of struggled on the ground. I think those numbers are a little bit misleading, and it's going to sound weird to say like Notre Dame relied too much on its explosiveness, but that is kind of what happened on Saturday. I think they had 456 yards of offense, something like that. And I think like 360 of them or something came on 4 or 5 plays. That's just, it's not where you want to be at. Obviously, we'll take the explosive plays, but at times there was a lot that left to be desired. And a lot of that stemmed from really just a kind of not great performance from the offensive line.
Yeah, and I would say that this is all relative to the expectations that we have for this group, because you've got a future NFL first-round pick at left tackle, and Joe Alt was incredible again. He did have that one holding penalty. It happens, whatever. I still thought he played really well. But when the expectations are that high and you have an opportunity going up against a pretty stout defense in NC State, especially at stopping the run, you were kind of hoping that they would solidify themselves as one of the best offensive lines in the country. And yes, I understand that NC State was blitzing a ton. I think they blitzed on 14 of Hartman's dropbacks. So it's going to be a tough task for the offensive line, but still, it was a chance to assert themselves, assert some dominance, and it just didn't really happen. Now, that's not to say that they won't continue to improve, and maybe by Ohio State, we're talking about a totally different performance from this group. But I also think it's fair to say, after watching that game, that they didn't get quite the push that you would want and expect from a group this talented.
No, they didn't. And hey, it only has been 3 weeks, so maybe, come week 4. I mean, that 2018 line didn't look great through 3 weeks either. So we'll see. I know we always say it takes a few weeks to gel, but hopefully that translates itself in week 4. I will say, though, they were not aided by the officials in this game. I kind of thought that holding penalty was BS. I don't know what was going on with these ACC officials, but it was one of those times where it's like these guys should have to face the media after the game because they were that bad. And it was just, there was a sequence where I swear there were like 8 flags in a row. And at some point, it's like a basketball game. You got to swallow the whistle. It's pathetic. It single-handedly kept NC State in the game too. It would have been, it would have been over in the second quarter if not for these officials. So that was just disgusting. And it's clear that Jim Phillips is leading a campaign. He wants this Notre Dame winning streak to end. And that is going all the way down to the officials. I don't care if I have to go to the papers about it, but this is all BS.
I didn't realize just how much the ACC was hurt by the fact that Notre Dame has this extended regular season winning streak. And we started to hear a little bit more about it in the lead up to this game, where Jim Phillips literally confronted the ACC coaches about it at Media Day, like, when are you going to beat Notre Dame, or something along those lines. So clearly it bothers him, and I got to say, that makes it all the more enjoyable when Notre Dame continues to beat the ACC, knowing that not only is the other team upset who just lost the game, every other school in the conference is also looking at the school like, come on, dude, when are we ever going to beat this team? So I'm with you. I think that some of the penalties were kind of dumb on Notre Dame. I'm with you. The officiating wasn't great. It was really frustrating at times. But still, from the Notre Dame perspective, this is the second thing I don't like. 10 penalties is 10 penalties, and NC State ended up earning 5 first downs via Notre Dame penalties. That's unacceptable. It needs to be cleaned up. That jumps out right now is Jack Kaiser's offsides. And the
offsides were bad.
Extremely uncharacteristic of Jack Kaiser. I don't think that's going to be a pattern, but still, it's one of those plays where you're like, dude, clean it up there. So, yes, part of it was due to the officiating. I agree some of the calls were very frustrating. Jason Onye's hands to the face was so ridiculous, considering he was clearly just going up to tip the pass. He didn't even come down. Like, it's plays like that where you're like, all right, nothing Notre Dame can do there, but still, I think there were some things that they needed to tighten up.
Yeah, the unsportsmanlike was also absolutely ridiculous. And frankly, I felt like their receivers could have gotten like 4 taunting penalties in that game.
They talked a lot of smack for not catching balls.
Sucking. Yeah.
They were not good.
Which will probably lead into my next point about the experience in general. But there were also, I think, like, it just seemed like their DBs were allowed to hit our receivers early a lot, especially early in that game. They missed a roughing the punter too early on. That was like blatant. And I don't know. I was just, those guys have got to clean it up. So yes, I agree. The offsides, because there were a couple times where I actually felt like we could have been called for offsides again. We were jumping a lot that needs to sort itself out. Other than that, these officials need help. But I spoke about how I thought those guys were talking a lot of smack. It wasn't just them. The fans, it's funny. In the pregame at a tailgate, I was talking to a listener of the show, actually, who lives in Raleigh, and I was asking him, like, what do you make of these fans? Like, how do they fit in the spectrum within the research triangle? And he said they're 8-4 fans. And I said, well, what does that mean? Like, well, they're just kind of around, they're loud, but really they are just there to kind of just instigate and cause problems. They're 8-4 fans. They don't have anything to care about. And that could not have been more true. As soon as I'm walking into the stadium, just getting cursed out by NC State fans, I saw NC State students screaming at elderly Notre Dame fans, like just making very, very inappropriate comments relating to the Catholic Church. There's always people about like just that think that Rudy sucks is an insult. Like nobody at Notre Dame really likes Rudy either. So I don't know like why that's still used. But the other thing that I just thought was absolutely classless was the amount of middle fingers you saw just being thrown up by the student section. Like that Notre Dame put out 2 videos today. One was the Holden Stays touchdown, which you tweeted out as well, of them flipping him off in the end zone. There's also in the Audric Estime, like coming out of the break. If you look in the start of that video, they tweeted out it's Notre Dame going down the tunnel, and the entire student section is giving them the bird. And I just thought like it was a really, really nasty environment, and they're not good enough to be that. And that's why they're doing it, because they have nothing else. Like you have some like it's Southern trash, and you have some old woman telling you go back to South Bend. I'm like, I don't know what your guys' problem is. They're just like kind of nasty, trashy people.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised when when the delay started and Notre Dame players are going in the tunnel. The camera just sat there on Notre Dame heading into the tunnel, and you could see this one kid with a mullet who's literally just like mother effing every single player who comes by. And of course, he's recording all of it. Like he thinks he's going to look cool when he posts it on social media. Like, oh, look at me. I was talking shit to all these Notre Dame players, but if they had said anything back to me or touched me at all, I'd probably file a lawsuit. Like those people I cannot stand. But it was happening all game, and I'm sure that like when Holden Stays, when he scored the touchdown, he goes right to him and he shushes him. Yes, he's like provoking them to an extent, but I'm guessing that wasn't the first thing he had heard all game. I think NC State fans were all over him. And I also get that it's a few bad apples that make a whole fan base look bad, but I didn't see any good apples in the crowd. It was nothing but bad the entire game.
No, I mean, that they were just nasty people. And your Great House also shushed them. I mean, so these guys were clearly hearing this the whole game. I also will say that the delay, I think, helped Notre Dame in that front, because I will give them this. It was loud at the start of that game. It was very loud, and the students all left after that delay. The student section was not nearly as crowded. So I think that probably helped Notre Dame. The last point on the crowd that I'll make is that they actually, and I did not think this is possible, they found a way to top that god-awful Are You Scared song for third down. I don't even know what this song is called, but just like imagine the worst rap song you've ever heard in your life that's like just like kind of like some sort of trap house song. It was so bad, and just it was loud and kind of it was a bit intimidating at the start, but then as the game went on, they kept playing it and they're getting their asses kicked. It's like, okay, can we just cut this out already? And that was very nice when they all left, when they're down 4 scores in the fourth quarter. There's nothing better than that. Every ACC stadium is the same. They're all a dump, and all the fans just leave when their team's getting their ass kicked by Notre Dame.
I think that's a good note to end on. Luke,
there you go.
Thanks for joining, man. We'll do it again next week.
Sounds good.
All right, that's a wrap for this episode. Thanks again for making this your first listen of the day. I'm working on some exciting stuff for these next couple of weeks, and I can't wait to share it with you. So make sure that you're subscribed to the show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and follow the show on social media. The Twitter/X account is @LockedOnIrish. I have finally succumbed to calling it /X. Anyway, Instagram is @LockedOnIrishPod, and my personal Twitter account is @Tyler, WOJCIAK. I'll see you guys tomorrow.